Welcome back. In this lecture, we're going to look at appropriate weight management strategies. Now, I'm going to say probably most of us know someone who's been on a weight reduction diet. I had a young lady come into my office, and here was her dietary strategy. To lose weight, she wasn't going to eat anything until 2 o'clock. After 2 o'clock, she was going to eat anything she wanted. That was the way that she approached weight management. Sound approach? I'm going to argue no. In this lecture, we're going to take a look at individuals who are successful losers using data from the National Weight Control Registry. We're also going to critique and explain some of the popular diets that are out there today so you can become a better consumer and better informed. How do you become the biggest loser? How do you do that? Well, the National Weight Control Registry, and I would encourage everyone to go to that website and take a look at it, gives us information on what do successful losers do. First and foremost, they eat breakfast, and they eat breakfast 7 out of 7 days. They weigh themselves at least once a week. Now, why does that work? It's accountability. If I'm going to manage my calories and increase my exercise, I also have to make sure that I'm checking in and being accountable. They exercise. People in the National Weight Control Registry exercise approximately an hour, yes, an hour every day. So what that means is that they're finding the time to prioritize their health. They reduce the amount of television time to less than 10 hours per week. They do restrict calories and oftentimes just follow a low-fat diet. Well, the two major scientists behind this initiative are James Hill and Rena Wing. Now, again, I'm going to suggest to you, check into that website. The people in the National Weight Control Registry, some of the people lose weight quickly, some of them lose it slowly, but in reality, this is a great way to say, what are the people who are getting this right and keeping it off? So in this National Weight Control Registry, they've been following these individuals, and these are individuals that have lost weight and kept it off. So it's not just people who lose, it's successful losers. Well, if you want to, again, tackle this strategy of weight management, how are you going to do that? Got a variety of different ways that you can approach it. And again, we're going to approach it with some scientific rigor. Now, you can get self-help books and manuals. You can go to the bookstore and find every book on diet that you'd ever want to. But I'm going to suggest to you, critique these books like a scientist. If the pattern is unbalanced, if they're telling you to avoid major food groups, that's going to be a red flag to you that, you know what, maybe this isn't scientifically based. If it claims breakthroughs, or more importantly says, I've got a quick fix for you, this is probably not the kind of diet that you want to be on. If it's irrational food instructions, that you have to combine your foods, or you can't eat this food with that food, keep in mind your gut is a very sophisticated organ, and you can really digest most food combinations. The promise of a cure for some diseases associated with weight loss. So if it says this is the diabetes cure, or the cholesterol cure, you got to start thinking to yourself, maybe there's some hype associated with that. But my favorite one is this food combining theory. There are books out there now that say, don't eat carbohydrate and protein together, because when it gets in your gut, it putrefies, it becomes rancid. That your body can't process carbohydrates and proteins together. Well, if you think about the lecture on digestion, your body is an amazing food processing organ. Think about this. If your body couldn't digest carbohydrate and protein together, all of us, the whole entire country, would be thin. So that's obviously not scientifically supported. Now, some people believe that they do better with meal replacements. And what are meal replacements? Things like Slim Fast, the drinks that come in a can. Well, they are absolutely convenient. You could bring a whole 6-pack into your office for a week, a little bit more than a week, so they're unbelievably convenient. The challenge with these meal replacements is, are you actually learning long-term eating strategy without the reliance on a special product? Now, for you, if you think, you know what, I really want to save most of my calories for the evening meal and I can get by with just a can at lunch, I really like that, I'm going to suggest this might be a good approach for you. If you actually look in the scientific literature, there is science to support the effectiveness of these meal replacement drinks. Now, what about self-help groups? Could you go to Overeaters Anonymous? Now, that's generally going to suggest that food is an addiction, and for some of us it might be. So that might be a place to look. Certainly many churches now have faith-based groups, And again, the whole idea behind it is that you have a commonality with the people that you're in this group with. And that might be a strategy to check into a church in your neighborhood, again, if you're part of that faith. The key with both OA and the faith-based groups is they provide peer support. You're in it together. It's camaraderie. It's also accountability, isn't it? If I have to go and visit with people that are, again, on the successful weight management strategy, it may provide me a little bit more motivation. Now, certainly you can go to a private counselor. You can go to physicians, psychotherapists, but I'm going to stop short of telling you to go to a nutritionist. And the reason is, in the United States at this time, nutritionist is not a legally protected title. So if you are interested in food, if you're interested in nutrition, by definition, you can call yourself a nutritionist. So what you want to look for in terms of self-help is you really want to look for a registered dietitian. A registered dietitian has the academic training, the clinical experience to help you navigate the waters of weight management. You also want to have a team approach. You want someone, if you're going to go to a private counselor and invest that time and money, you want someone who's going to really help you to overcome the barriers and provide an individual weight management program for you. Now, what about commercial programs? Well, certainly there's Jenny Craig, there's Nutrisystem, and they provide some counseling, not done by a dietitian or a physician, but by their counselors, and they provide some support and sell some prepackaged foods. So if you really need to have the food delivered to your home or you pick up your food and you don't want to cook, this might be a great solution for you. Sometimes some of these programs will promote very low-calorie diets, and they can be medically supervised or not. In these liquid, and they're generally liquid, these medically supervised diets, you have little to no food choice. It's typically really only used as a last resort, so I don't know that I would recommend this as a first step, but it may be a step along this path. It's thought that in individuals who are really having a difficult time breaking that overeating cycle, this puts the brakes on it because you have no choice of food. It's provided for you. Again, it's usually liquid and very low calorie. The programs with the best results that provide these very low calorie diets are those with an interdisciplinary focus, more than one healthcare provider. Okay, what about the popular diet strategies? So you've looked at self-help, you've looked at maybe a weight reduction book, and you're thinking, okay, I think I'm going to start out with a popular diet. I think I'm going to do that. Well, probably the most popular, and I'm going to say probably most controversial diet over the last 30 years, and yes, Atkins keeps coming over and over and over again in different forms, is the Atkins diet. And what is it? It is a low-carbohydrate, ketogenic diet that says you can eat whatever you want as long as it's just from protein-containing foods. So what does ketogenic mean? Ketogenic means that you're burning fat faster than you can get rid of the waste products, and the waste products of rapid fat metabolism are ketones. So any diet that's ketogenic or supports you becoming ketotic is, again, going to be a low-carbohydrate diet. Advocates of this diet suggest the restriction of carbohydrate to 20 grams a day or less. So what does that mean in terms of practicality? Slice of bread has 15 grams of carbohydrate, and a half a cup of vegetables has 5. That would be your only carbohydrate on that diet. That's it. So 20 grams is not a whole lot of carbohydrate. So what happens is that the body is now forced to come up with a different way of getting its own energy, and again, it produces ketone bodies. In theory, ketones that are lost in your urine represent unused energy. So not all the fat is going to be metabolized into usable energy, and the ketones are going to be the waste product of that. So there's some energy associated with ketones. So theoretically, it gives the Atkins devotees the idea that you can eat whatever you want, again, as long as it's going to be only protein-containing foods. The success of these diets lies in the fact that when most people decrease the amount of carbohydrate, they end up decreasing their total calorie intake. Now, you might be a carnivore, you might really like meat, but if that's all you could eat, it may not sound so delicious. So instead of a steak and baked potato, it's steak. Instead of a grilled cheese sandwich, it's cheese. The food choices are somewhat boring, and human beings actually experience what is known as taste fatigue. You get tired of eating the same food over and over again, and it actually becomes less delicious. The initial weight loss on this diet is as the body is trying to clear those ketones, It has to do it with fluid. So the initial weight losses on this diet are largely dehydration. I will tell you, for many individuals, that's somewhat motivating. I had a woman who was my height and 400 pounds, lost 25 pounds in the first week on this diet. Did she lose 25 pounds of body fat? No. Did she lose 25 pounds of weight? Yes, but a lot of that was fluid. Keep in mind, with water loss, it reduces your scale weight, but doesn't necessarily reduce your body fat. Now, low carbohydrate diets can also cause a significant reduction in lean mass. You remember that lean mass, muscle mass, can be a source of carbohydrate. Remember, what happens is that the lean mass in the absence of carbohydrate is sent to the liver, and some of that protein can be turned into carbohydrate in order to maintain your blood sugar. So again, protein is a very expensive source of carbohydrate. The loss of this lean mass ends up reducing your basal metabolic rate, and that is a very undesirable effect for individuals that are looking for long-term weight loss. Remember, the more muscle mass you have, the bigger your metabolic engine. So this big metabolic engine wastes fuel. So you want as much muscle mass as you can, and a low-carbohydrate diet isn't going to do that. Now, the Atkins diet remains credible in some eyes because you can actually see some improvement in health. Think, how can I get some improvement in health? Remember, if you lose weight, even 5 to 10% of your body weight, you can have improvement in some of your risk factors. Certainly some of the measures of heart disease are also going to be impacted by the Atkins diet. Some of the science will suggest that individuals that are on a low carbohydrate diet, Atkins diet, can actually have improvement in their triglycerides and their other lipids. So the challenge is going to be, you can see an improvement in not only blood lipid profiles, but blood sugar profiles. So again, you can go to the literature, and the literature will suggest individuals who stay on an Atkins diet can have improvement in their overall health. Certainly there are medical versions of Atkins, so I'm always amazed when my colleagues say we should never recommend Atkins, because in the hospital we do have something called a protein-sparing modified fast, medical Atkins. However, you really have to think about long-term health. And the Atkins diet needs more long-term research on overall health risks. We know that individuals that eat all of this protein have an increased uric acid level, and remember, uric acid contributes to the development of gout. It may increase the development of kidney stones because now my body has to get rid of all the extra acid. Ketones are acidic bodies. It can result in cardiac arrhythmias because it significantly alters the amount of sodium and potassium in your blood. So many people will say when they're on the Atkins diet they can feel their heart skip a beat. Again, it can cause acidosis, which can cause damage to tissues and organs. It may make pre-existing kidney problems worse because protein waste products can only be metabolized through the kidney. And so the more excess protein that I take in, I'm increasing the workload on the kidney. The other side effects are it significantly depletes the little bit of carbohydrate that you store as glycogen in your muscles and liver, and it can make you unbelievably tired. So people that are on low carbohydrate diets really have exercise intolerance. They can't go out and exercise at the same rate. Certainly because there is no low-fat dairy on this diet, it reduces calcium balance and can increase your risk of bone loss. Certainly we know, maybe it's intended and unintended, it results in dehydration. Now, to me as a dietitian, one of the things that's most concerning to me is the absence of fruits and vegetables. Fruits and vegetables are that natural anti-inflammatory, and keep in mind, heart disease, cancer, and most chronic illnesses have inflammation as part of their pathophysiology. So I've got no buffer. I have nothing that's going to prevent me from having an inflammatory response. Now, what about other ways? If we step outside of Atkins, again, very low calorie diets and very low carbohydrate diets certainly can be under strict medical supervision. When would you use something like that? When would you use a very low calorie diet, something that's under 1,000 calories a day? In individuals that have severe clinical obesity, a BMI of at least greater than 35 may be a candidate for one of these programs. The advocates of these programs will suggest you're going to limit your daily calorie intake to between 400 and 800 calories. It's going to be mostly high-quality protein-containing foods. And these diets actually came out maybe 30 years ago, and the early versions of these were in a mystery liquid form that, unbeknownst to the consumer, the protein that was in these foods was ground up animal hooves, horns, pig skin, mixed with some enzymes and tenderizers to pre-digest it. I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound terribly delicious to me. These liquids were largely collagen-based and didn't contain all the essential amino acids. So what does that mean? If you reflect back to the protein lecture, if I don't have all the essential amino acids in the right amount, protein synthesis stops. So individuals that were on these earlier diets had abnormalities in their EKG, they had copper deficiencies, they had an increased heart rate. But now we have much better versions, much more improved versions, and probably the most popular one is Medifast. Well, do we have some common sense approaches if we don't want to do the dieting extreme? What else can we do? Weight Watchers. Weight Watchers is probably one of the most successful commercial programs out there, and for good reason. It contains all the components of a successful diet. It's calorie managed, it promotes recipe development, it promotes accountability. It's calorie restriction, accountability, and support. Again, those are the hallmarks of successful programs. You can get recipes and tips during weigh-ins, and you can certainly now do Weight Watchers online. Another diet approach that I really like is the South Beach diet. It's written by a cardiologist, so that's going to amp it up a little bit. And it's low glycemic. Remember, low glycemic index diets are ones that the carbohydrate is processed slowly, it blunts that insulin response, and for individuals who tend to accumulate their weight in their gut, they tend to have that belly fat, a low glycemic index diet might be a good strategy. There's also a cookbook associated with it and some meal plans. And I've actually cooked foods from the cookbook, and they're absolutely delicious. Now, when you're trying to, as a consumer, think, what's the newest and latest, greatest diet book that's out there? How can someone critique this for me? You can check the Great Diet Book Review on the website of the American Dietetic Association. American Dietetic Association's website is eatright.org, and every year they're going to review the latest and greatest diet book and give you a critique. Keep in mind, all diets are going to work if you follow them. Okay. We got to come up with this, what about exercise again? And although exercise is not a popular diet, it's not going to be Weight Watchers, it's not going to be South Beach. The amount of calories that you actually burn in exercise is relatively low. So if that's your primary weight loss strategy, I think you're going to be disappointed. Remember, you burn about 100 calories per mile of walking. So let's do the math. I eat a 900 calorie slice of cheesecake, and yes, if you get cheesecake in a restaurant, it can be 900 calories. I'm going to suggest you serve that to a family of 4. That's not a singular portion. If you do the math, you got to walk 9 miles. Well, I don't know about you. I'm not going to walk 9 miles if I eat a 900 calorie slice of cheesecake, and most people out eat their exercise. Now, in order to prevent weight regain after weight loss, exercise is absolutely key. Remember the National Weight Control Registry. Again, exercise may also aid in the loss of visceral or belly fat. In interval training, where you walk and then maybe jog for 30 seconds and walk and jog, may be the most desirable form. Well, is there anything else? If I've tried this, I've tried commercial products, I've tried a lot of other things. What about over-the-counter drugs and dietary supplements? Remember, the dieting industry has the most fraud associated with it. So again, if you're putting on your detective hat, you got to think, okay, could there be fraud in these over-the-counter drugs and dietary supplements? Well, many of the weight loss supplements contain caffeine in some way, shape, or form. You might not recognize it. Sources of caffeine include guarana, they include kola nut, they include yerba mate. These are words that don't roll off the tongue of most Americans. Caffeine is a stimulant and a diuretic in large amounts, so that might be a strategy for weight control. I don't know about you, but if I consumed a whole lot of caffeine, it might be a little nauseating to me, and that would also blunt my appetite. Benzocaine is actually added to a lot of the weight loss products, and I love this strategy. The strategy is, I'm going to numb your tongue. Benzocaine is a topical numbing agent. I'm going to numb your tongue, and hopefully reduce the way that the food tastes and discourage eating. Well, I liken that to going and having dental work at the dentist, and they inject you with a numbing agent and you end up biting your tongue, so maybe that would work, I don't know. There are fiber pills out there, and we do know that fiber helps in its natural form in fruits and vegetables and whole grains. That does promote fullness. A fiber pill is going to be encapsulated fiber, and I'm going to have to drink a lot of water in order to get that gut expansion. And I've seen some really disastrous consequences of people taking fiber pills with inadequate water. Now, certainly the theory behind this is if I fill up your belly enough, you're going to have less of an appetite. Some of that's true. But again, this combination where I might be getting caffeine, benzocaine, and fiber all in one pill can actually lead to some dehydration. And again, remember, the scale can move, but if it's dehydration, I haven't lost body fat. So very few studies have evaluated any of these products over the counter for weight loss, and there's little evidence to promote their use. Okay, is there anything else? Yeah, there is. There was a product on the market, and I'm going to tell you it's coming back, called ephedra. And in 2004, the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, actually banned the use of ephedra. Ephedra does show short-term weight loss. So is it an effective supplement? Absolutely. But it's absolutely dangerous to people with hypertension, heart disease, or diabetes. So I think the challenge is that ephedra was removed from the market in 2004. And now it's creeping back in, and certainly the internet is going to be a place where a lot of people are going to end up getting ephedra. You can get a lot of things on the internet that you really shouldn't be able to get, and ephedra is a great example. What about anti-obesity drugs? Do we have anything that we can actually use? And yes, we do. There are two that are approved by the FDA. One is called Meridia, and the generic name for that is sibutramine. And Xenical or Orlistat are approved for long-term treatment. Meridia is an appetite suppressant that actually affects the chemicals in the brain, but it will increase blood pressure. So if you're hypertensive, if you have high blood pressure, Meridia might not be for you. It increases blood pressure and increased heart rate. And again, some public interest groups have asked the U.S. to take it off the market. The problem is I can get anything on the internet. I can get anything on the internet, and that's going to become important in just a minute. Xenical actually interferes with pancreatic lipase, and pancreatic lipase, remember ASE is an enzyme, digests fat, and it interferes with fat digestion and can reduce the absorption of fat by up to 30%. Well, anytime I malabsorb fat, I'm going to also lose those fat-soluble vitamins. Now, in 2002, there was some research suggesting it improved weight loss by 2 to 3%. You can now get Xenical or Orlistat in an over-the-counter version called Ally. And Ally, again, Ally, Orlistat, Xenical, all have to be consumed with a low-fat diet. So the biggest problem with Ally is it causes fat malabsorption, and the side effects can be significant and really difficult to manage. Oily diarrhea comes to mind. It's causing fat malabsorption. So if I decide I'm going to take Ally and go out and eat a cheese pizza, I'm going to be stuck in my house because the diarrhea becomes uncontrollable. So the FDA always suggests with any of these anti-obesity drugs, you got to do them in concert with a low-calorie diet. Now that internet is going to come up over and over again. You can actually buy amphetamines over the internet. You can buy Meridia over the internet without a physician's prescription. I've tried to do that multiple times, and I can buy anything. So again, I think the real challenge is you can buy addictive drugs. Your children or grandchildren can buy addictive drugs, i.e. amphetamines, off the internet, and you've got to be really very vigilant about that. Again, amphetamines are an addictive drug. Now, the benefits of drug therapy over behavioral modification interventions are modest at best. So most people can't live on amphetamines. Yes, you'll lose weight, but most people can't live on them. Well, what's our last stop on this road? We've looked at popular diets, we've looked at ketogenic diets, behavioral support, Weight Watchers. The last resort is going to be surgery. And it can be effective in individuals who have what is called morbid obesity, a BMI of greater than 40. It really should be a last effort after all legitimate efforts have been tried. Now I'm going to tell you, there have been times where I'll say there is no other solution. Remember my biggest man. The biggest man was 1,065 pounds. In him, gastric surgery is life-saving. Now there's gastric banding, and what gastric banding does is reduce the size of the stomach by creating a smaller upper stomach. So that's going to actually be advantageous. You see this with gastric banding and gastric bypass. If I reduce the stomach size, I can reduce food intake. If I have gastric bypass, I can actually bypass some of that small intestine. And remember that most of the digestion and absorption in your whole GI tract occurs in the small intestine. So if I bypass the small intestine by surgical rerouting, I will end up with not only a smaller intake, small stomach, but I'm also going to malabsorb or lose some of those calories when I have a bowel movement because I've bypassed some of the intestine. Now, what are the results with gastric bypass or gastric banding? Patients lose substantially more weight in the initial phases than those just using exercise and a proper diet. However, the weight loss tends to plateau between 1.5 years and 2 years, but most patients can maintain about 50% of that initial body weight loss after 5 years. However, I've actually had a patient who now is on her 3rd gastric bypass. She figured out ways of just getting in very high-calorie liquid foods, milkshakes, ice cream, things such as that. So the long-term effectiveness of this program depends on how people manage their eating. You got to exercise. You got to stay away from those really calorie-dense foods, the milkshakes, the ice creams. And again, there are no long-term studies on bariatric surgery and pregnancy, for example. Now, I'm going to suggest to you that there are other ways that people try and reshape their body. Liposuction actually just sucks out body fat. Now, that's not effective as a long-term solution. In fact, it's generally not recommended for individuals who really are having a hard time with this weight cycling, their weight's going up and down, because you can get a really cosmetically poor effect if I suck out fat and then I replace it with more. So it's not effective as a long-term treatment. The risks include blood clot, perforation injuries, skin and nerve damage, and again, unfavorable drug reactions for some of the medications that are used. So what does work? Decrease your energy intake by 500 to 1,000 calories below daily expenditure. Moderately restricting food intake is a plan, because if I severely restrict it, I'm not going to be able to stay with that long enough. Again, if I moderately restrict my food intake, I'm going to have a greater fat loss than with a drastic energy restriction. People who create large daily deficits tend to lose weight more rapidly, but they also regain it, and that's what we want to avoid doing. Keep tabs on your habits and become involved in other activities other than eating, especially something with fitness. Long-term success depends on maintaining the lifestyle changes that helped you to lose weight originally. For the best effect, weight management plans must be individualized. So I think that's a real key point. If you've tried everything, you may want to go and think, I need to have something that's going to fit me and it's going to fit my lifestyle. Okay, now we're going to talk about those frequently asked questions. Kinds of things that I see in my clinical practice all the time. Are there diets that are dangerous? And how do I know? Again, be a detective. If it sounds too good to be true, if this diet approach is promising you the sun, the stars, and the moon, you got to think, okay, first of all, that ain't going to work. And second of all, it has the potential to be dangerous if it's really restricting a significant amount of food. Really touchy subject. Should children go on weight reduction diets? I have to tell you, years ago I would have said no. I would have said absolutely not. Let them grow into their weight. What I see now, though, is girls, and again, my youngest girl with type 2 diabetes at Texas Children's is 4. She's 120 pounds. She's going to have to be an adult before she grows into that weight. And so in someone like that, I would suggest, yeah, they have to go on a weight reduction diet. The science of children and weight management is just so concerning, because children that are obese in elementary school are bullied, they're teased, they're less likely to go to prom or dances, they're less likely to be invited to social interactions. And so I think the challenge is, what do we do for individuals like that? And I've now reversed my philosophy, given the magnitude of obesity that I see, and now we'll put children on calorie-controlled plans. And probably more importantly, I put their parents on calorie-controlled plans. What about fasting and colon cleaning for weight reduction? Absolutely not. Now, if you're fasting for religious reasons, I support that. But to fast for weight control or to do a colon cleanses are just going to dehydrate you because they're cleaning out your large intestine. And where is food absorbed? Small intestine. Ineffective strategy for weight control. I can change the scale weight, but I can't change the body weight. Fasting, as we know, for weight control only is going to chew up functional lean mass, and that's really what we want to avoid. So the common sense things: eat less, exercise more, be vigilant, always rule the day. Thank you very much.